RX, where I prescribe entertainment one movie at a time. I am your host, Dr. Benjamin, and I'm a doctor in the same way that Dr. Phil is a doctor, which is to say not at all. Have you ever had a movie change you? I have. But first, before we get into that, let me introduce my guest host for today. I have one of the two co-hosts for the Roundtable Mindset podcast. She's also my older sister. Joining me today is Jamie. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Excited is my word, so I'm just going to go with it.
Excited. I noticed that transferred from Roundtable Mindset. So we're going to bring excitement.
Thing to talk about.
Yes, bringing excitement to movie RX.
There you
go. Today we're talking about Fight Club, and just for those that may not have watched it, even though I'm sending out a prescription before this goes, the information behind this movie, it was released in 1999. The screenplay was written by Chuck Palahniuk and Jim Uhls. Chuck Palahniuk is the author of the book that this movie is based on. This movie is directed by David Fincher, who apparently is just absolutely in love with Brad Pitt because he also directed Seven and Curious Case of Benjamin Button. This movie...
I didn't know that.
What?
I didn't know that he directed Seven.
Yeah.
That's
kinda,
cool.
I mean, yeah. The guy's actually got a lot of good movies under his belt. Those were just the two that I picked because they both have Brad Pitt in them. Who is one of the stars? Yeah. I'm actually kind of a bigger fan of Edward Norton.
Me too. But Brad Pitt's cool.
Brad Pitt's cool. Not so much for his new beard thing. Is he still doing the beard thing? Like the scraggly beard that looks like a wet dog?
I haven't seen him in so long in anything really relevant recently. Of course, I'm also not in the stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in that stuff very much, but I don't remember seeing him in the last 5 or 6 years. So
yeah,
I don't know.
He's yodeling on a rooftop somewhere with Jimmy Fallon.
What?
Look it up.
I have to.
Jimmy Fallon and yodeling. Yeah. It's they have a whole conversation. It was back when World War Z came out, so it's not fresh.
Okay.
I mean, just keep that in mind.
Well, apparently
Fight
I'm
Club,
not real fresh either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not on a movie podcast, so like, I mean, that's supposed to be my thing. So
that's true.
Like, I'm the one that's kind of fallen behind here.
Well.
But yeah, so this movie has it's kind of a heavy hitting cast here. You know, I mean, starting with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, and then tossing in Helena Bonham Carter, and then if that wasn't enough, Meatloaf.
I know.
Meatloaf was in this movie. Like,
Bob.
I don't know how you didn't watch this movie before I brought it to you, because Meatloaf is in this movie, Jamie.
Well, yeah, I know. I didn't know Meatloaf was in the movie until you made me watch it, though. So,
right.
Such a good movie.
This something that's kind of fun about this movie, though. It has been nominated for 1 Oscar, and
it still blows my mind.
You wouldn't guess what it was for, because like, with a movie like this and with the kind of cult following that it has, you would assume that it would be, you know, a pretty incredible portrayal of a character from either, you know, Edward Norton or Brad Pitt. But it has nothing to do with any of that. Like, right. It was a best effects in sound effects editing, and it
so blows my mind. It blows my mind because literally, I would never look at this as some sort of special effects movie. Not ever. Like,
no, it kind of missed the mark. Of course, I don't know how familiar you are with any of Chuck Palahniuk's stories. But any of his books that get turned into movies tend to be hard received by a lot of critics and things like that. And it is because he just has that very distinctive writing style. That is very present in Fight Club, in this movie especially. This movie was very close to the book. But
I didn't know it was a book until we started talking about this. So I had no idea. Now I want to go read the book because I'm curious. I'm curious. Normally the book is better than the movie, but
right. Be prepared for a ride. Like it can be kind of a difficult book to read. Like you sometimes have to force yourself to put it down because you want to keep reading, but at the same time you feel like you're being bludgeoned with intellectual epiphanies. Like you have to take it in, and he doesn't give you an opportunity to do that before he continues with his story. It's amazing.
I guess I can't say that I'm surprised because that's kind of how the movie is. You know what I mean? I mean, I've watched this movie now, I don't even know how many times. And I swear every time I watch it, I get something else out of it. You know what I mean? Like I grab just a little bit more. So I'm sure I'll have to really pay attention to the book as I read that.
Right. So kind of what I wanted to do was, before we really kind of get into the meat of some of the things that we really liked about the movie, I just kind of wanted to get your take on it. Like, what's did you detect like an intended message in this movie?
Well, I think the screaming message to me is consumerism, and the effect of consumerism on us as a people. That was definitely, it was just blaringly obvious. So I feel like that's kind of a softball theme, but, I definitely, watching it again recently to kind of prep for this, I was really surprised at how many messages were in it. You know what I mean? So kind of like the work-life balance stuck out to me this time, just because that's something that I've been, it's something that it touched real close to me where I'm at right now, in this stage of my life. So that was a big theme. There was a couple of times where he kind of talked about things like, you aren't the contents of your wallet. You're not, you know what I mean? So those kind of things rang true for me too.
And it's funny kind of because when he says things like, like, you are not the contents of your wallet and you are not your fucking khakis. Like, it's really like you look at that and you go, you're goddamn right. But then you're still one of those people that's on Amazon being like, ooh, which one should I get? Like,
you are not your khakis, and I'm looking down at my khakis. Like,
right. I totally see that. No, yeah. and like it calls you out on some of those things that, like, that better. But I think the best way that he put it in that movie was there was a point where he said the words, "The things you own end up owning you."
Yes.
And it's like, especially like for me in the last year, like, I just bought a house for the first time. Right. I feel like a slave to my home. I love my house. I wouldn't give it up for anything. But it's like, but now I feel like there's a lot of things that, like, oh, well, that's just not an option anymore. Like, because right. I now own this home. And it's kind of the same thing with anything that you buy. I mean, even just the thing that we've all been told, take care of your things, well, this is something that you own, and now you have to take care of it.
Right.
and now you have this responsibility to keep it. And I don't know, it's something that almost just seems to perpetuate with just simply owning things, which, asks the question, what's he telling you? Is he telling you to wear a loincloth and live in the woods?
Well, I really think that part of the message in that isn't so much like, don't go buy a house, don't go buy a car. But, if you think
He didn't own
about,
a car, by the way,
right, right.
because he stole the guy's car at the airport.
Mhm. Oh my goodness. But if you think about, like, sometimes when those things that we own start owning us, part of that is where we give that the permission to do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you overextend yourself, if you go out and have, all kinds of debt for things that you've purchased, that's when it starts owning you, but having the things that you need to stay comfortable. And I think one of the things that I loved about this movie is it really took something that we all know. We all know that our consumerism can consume us, right? But it made it so magnified that it was like in your face. You know what I'm saying? Like
It was
it
almost
was
a
like the other
caricature of
extreme.
everybody's daily
Yes.
life. Yeah.
Yes.
It kind of does the whole, what I call balls in your face, where it just dangles it right there in front of your face. And you're just like, oh, this is disgusting.
Yep.
But yet try to stop it, try to
Yep.
stop yourself from doing it. What I kind of came away with that is that, okay, so the things you own end up owning you. That's really only if you let them.
Mhm.
Like I had given the example with a house, like I own the home. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of this thing that I have that I never in my life thought that I would ever have before. And so, then it kind of goes into your realm, the realm of your podcast, where it's really kind of a mindset thing. It's a
Yeah.
perspective thing.
Yep.
If you look at all of these things that you have as things that are keeping you from progressing, then they're going to keep you from progressing.
Yeah.
Rather than being a part of it. So that's just kind of one of the things that I saw anyway.
Another quote that kind of played into that too was, it isn't until you've lost everything that you're truly free. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of spoke to me of that, like, when you're in that cycle, you kind of have to hit rock bottom before you can just be like, okay, when you can shed all of the weight of the stuff, that you can really feel okay. And I've definitely been in this phase recently where, like, minimalism is the goal.
Right.
Which it sounds super millennial, but it's okay. The less stuff I have, the less stuff I need, the less stuff I have to move, the less stuff I have to clean. Like, it just is it's been really kind of freeing to just purge, So I think that's, I feel a sense of that. Like, I'm getting rid of things, and it does feel lighter. It feels like less responsibility. It feels like less burden. So it's interesting how it's interesting watching this right now in this phase where I'm in, like, oh yeah.
Well,
How long have these
just
things owned me?
seeing all of, like, a lot of parts of this movie. Yeah, because it's probably been 5 years or more since I've seen it too. When I watched it this morning, it was just kind of like, wow, I'm seeing so many different things that I never conceived as being a part of this movie before. There's a little bit of flavor in there for for addiction, even.
Yeah.
That whole the quote that you just picked. It's not until you lose everything until you're finally free. That is a big part of recovery, is losing everything, hitting that rock bottom, and then realizing that all you have is to go up,
Yeah.
just and having the freedom to make that choice to do so. Just the interpretation of so many of these things in a different age is crazy to me. So I have a
Yes.
whole new appreciation for this movie.
And I don't remember when I was excited to do this movie with you because this is a movie you gave me, right? Like, this is one of those movies that you're like, Jamie, you have to see this film. You have to see this movie. And it was something like, and like Fight Club, yeah, not my cup of tea, right? Like, I didn't like the Rocky movies. I'm not into UFC or any of that kind of stuff. So it
And what did
wasn't
I
something.
tell you? It's not about the fighting. That's not what this is about. Yeah, this is about learning about people and how people work.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is how I think it had a different message for me then than it does now. You know what I mean? And
do you know
yet I
why
can
it did?
see. Well,
Like,
I think do you have some insight? Maybe I don't. I'm curious what you say.
The reason I brought you this movie was because this was not terribly long after you started calling me jaded.
Oh,
you
yeah.
you would tease me like, how can you be so jaded? I could never get across. It was hard for me to convey my view of the world and why I was that way. And I found a movie that was full of like little quotes. I took some of them down because it was just such a big deal for me. This is your life and it's ending 1 minute at a time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and there's was another song that I really liked about this time, that one of the lines was, as soon as you're born, you start dying. Like, I had really taken that in at the time. I was what, 15, 16, something like that. And that's where I was with it. It was just, the world is not what everybody has told me that it is. And I don't know how to come to terms with that. And so many of the things in this movie were able to do that for me. And so I gave you this movie to try to show you this is who I am. Reflecting on it now, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I could have been telling my sister I was a fucking schizophrenic, but like, at the time it was like, this is a place that I was coming from, in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's why I brought you this movie.
Well, and you and I have always kind of been yin and yang that way. Like, you're a little more jaded. I try to stay a little more strength-based and upbeat. But I think if I can think back to what, like, at the time, this was probably the beginning of my, like, I don't know, scrutiny of capitalism and consumerism, and really taking a look at my own belief system. Because I think at the time that this movie came out, and really most of the late 90s, I think it really was this huge push toward consumerism. I mean, you think about things like the Beanie Baby craze and, some of those crazy things that happened back then. This really started challenging some of that for me, and looking at, capitalism and our consuming and things like that in a different way was really, it was really introspective. And I think some of those the zingers, the one-liners in this film, man, I mean, some of them have really stuck with me, that in the beginning when he's like talking about the oxygen and showing the pictures of the card in the airplane.
Calm as Hindu cows.
Well, and seriously, like, thinking about that. And then when later in the film they come back with the other one and it's like everybody's terrorized. And I was like, oh, thank God they don't put that stuff on airplanes. But, those subliminal messages that we get from corporate America and from all of these things, just really kind of put a spotlight on that for me. And I love how, watching it this time, those kind of things were just like, oh yeah, look, Look at what we consume, even information that we consume, stuff like that.
Right.
It's shocking. Now, is this the film? Oh, yeah. When another of the one-liners that I loved was, "You aren't special. You're just like every other dying or rotting organism," or whatever that was.
We are the all singing, all dancing crap of the world. Yeah.
I don't know.
No,
this guy.
That we all come from the same compost heap is what he said. Yeah.
Well, and I think some of those things, it's funny because I think there's times in my life where I really needed that message, and there's times in my life where that message wouldn't have been helpful for me at all. You know what I mean? Like, there's times where I really do need to be able to say, you know what, I'm just like everybody else. My problems aren't any bigger than anybody else's problems, and I can deal with it just like everybody else can. And there's times where that would have been really destructive for me. Like, I needed to feel kind of special, right? So
right. That kind of reminds me of another portion in the movie where he's kind of talking about, like, there's this mass hysteria, especially in Americans right now, and has been for decades, where we all seem to be under this impression that someday we're going to be a millionaire and we're not going to have any money worries and we're going to be rock stars. And, and, it's, I mean, granted, I think that the crazy thing is that I think it's easier for people to obtain that now than it was then. But still, like, I mean, well, with like YouTube creators and, you can be a self-made person now.
Right.
Like, that kind of stuff back then wasn't an option. The internet has really kind of opened up the world to the average man, as far as opportunities go. But even then, like, people who aren't taking any initiative to do anything for themselves or to start some kind of investment or something like that, people who are working, who are working jobs that aren't paying great, and they're buying the latest video game system and the latest games and all of this stuff. They're constantly spending their money and there's nothing going towards their future, are still just dead convinced that they're going to be millionaires someday. And he points that out, like, why are we all this way? When it's not realistic. How he had all those things in his apartment, and they all blew up, and that stuff was him. He knew that whatever happened, he had the sofa thing handled. And
I'm sorry, that made me laugh.
Right.
That made me laugh. Because in the movie, how old was he? Like 22 or something? I have no idea how old he was, but I'm just like, I don't know how many sofas I've had in my life, but no, you didn't have the sofa thing handled. Eventually you were going to need another one, man. I'm just saying. Like,
right. I mean, like, seriously, what are you not doing on your sofa? Like,
do you use your sofa?
Yeah. This is my decorative sofa, and this is the one you may sit on. Like, I don't know. But he had said how he had talked about how his life was complete, or it was nearly complete or whatever. And Tyler Durden goes off on this thing where he's like, I say, what was it? It was, I say, never be complete. I say, stop being perfect. I say, let's evolve. And it's like, those kind of things stuck with me really good too, because it's like, when you let yourself get complacent is when you stop being able to evolve. And it's very important that you continue to be able to change as time goes. Otherwise, I mean, could you imagine somebody who doesn't know how to use even the simplest of cell phones now traveling?
Yeah. Well, and I think the movie did a really great job poking holes in the fallacy of that, though, because in that space where he's sitting in this beautiful apartment with all of the perfect IKEA furniture that fits just perfectly in the taupe walls, in the beige aesthetic, and yet he's going to his doctor saying, I can't sleep. And he
Mm-hmm.
starts going to all of these self-help groups, these 12-step programs, to simply make connection with people, to have some sort of emotional connection. So as he's sitting looking like his life is perfect and all in order, and he's done all the things that he's supposed to do and he's checked all the boxes, clearly there was something missing, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that is I think that that's a huge portion of the movie is like, he still needed connection, you know what I mean? And he was missing it in a big way. And it was causing lots of problems, mental health problems, problems at work. He was empty inside because he had no people. He had nobody around him, except for Bob.
Right. Well,
And
and when he finally figured out that, okay, I need to have this conversation with Marla Singer because she was getting in on his action and it was bothering him, and he couldn't he couldn't have that release anymore. That brings to mind that problem is getting worse. That disconnect between people, which is absurd because we are so much more connected now to each other than we have ever been. But yet the substance of that connection is lost in a catastrophic way. And part of it is when he has that conversation with Marla, when he pulls her off to the side and and then he's like,
they split the week.
this needs to stop, and
testicular cancer's mine.
Like, right. No, I want testicular cancer. But no, it was when they were crying, when she was crying on his shoulder, fake crying. And then she realized that he was doing it just the same way she was. And she asked him, she was like, you could see that look in her face when she was like, why do you do it?
Yeah.
That unbelievable, I need to know why you do it to make sure that I'm not weird kind of thing. And he said, when people think you're dying, actually they both said, because she finished his sentence, but he was like, when people think you're dying, they really, really listen to you, instead of just waiting for their turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know about you, and I mean, maybe some of the listeners can kind of relate, but I feel like in more and more conversations that I have with people in real life, so many more of them feel like they are people that they're not even listening to you when you're talking. They're staring at you and like they're making a point to nod and blink, but they're not listening to you at all. And then as soon as you stop talking, then that's when it's just like, and then they say something that has nothing to do with what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I worked a job in another town that way for 5 years. That everybody in the office was like that except for one. And she was like 70 something. Like when you talk to her, she would listen,
Right.
but everybody else, nobody is listening to each other when they talk now. And so like, I think that message, that whole, just waiting for their turn to speak thing, I think that whole message was way before its time. And I think that it is extremely relevant now because that is the world.
You even think about, just thinking about his relationships, even the connection that he was making in those groups was still surface. You know what I mean? It was still super surfacey and really based on fallacy anyway. He was in those groups so that he could leech something off of them, And it wasn't a real connection, but it was enough to help him sleep. You know, it was enough to give him some sort of hope to keep going. And that, yeah, I hadn't thought of that before now. Like even his connections there were super shallow. And that's, yeah.
And that, I think that problem is much more real than it was even, you know, like, God, it's been 15 years since this movie came out. Even since the 15 years that it came out.
1999.
25 years.
It's like 25 years.
25 years since this movie came out. And
I can't even. I'm sorry, that's blowing my mind a little bit. Just 25 years ago was 1999.
Quarter of a century. You watched this movie a quarter of a century ago. Just saying.
I watched that movie. I don't think it was quite. No, it was like probably 2005 or 2007 ish that you gave me the movie.
Oh, it wasn't that late because it was.
You don't think so?
No, I think it was like maybe 03, 04.
Yeah, maybe.
04 even, at the latest.
Even still, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wow, 25 years ago. I graduated high school more than 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
Not anyway. Me. But yeah, in 25 years, like some of the stuff in this movie really almost seems prophetic, in a way.
Yeah.
Even some of the generational stuff, which I mean that's kind of fun in and of itself, because I mean you and I are divided by a generational line. You know, you're very much Gen X. And
I'm Zillennial,
very
aren't
much
I?
Millennial. Huh?
I think I'm Zillennial. I think I'm a Zillennial is what they're. I think there's like a sub.
Oh, that's dumb.
I'm pretty sure. Well, except I don't know, Ben. I really feel like I get to dance between both a little bit.
No. George Carlin was right. We don't need any more special interest groups.
Oh, I don't have to be a special interest group.
No, you're a Gen Xer.
Okay, fine. I'll fight you. It's fine.
But no, like even the message at the you know, as far as the whole like tearing everything down and restarting the cleaning the slate for everybody financially and you know, redoing the whole thing. I mean, that's something that millennials really dream of. Like, why can't that just happen? Like, I mean, so many of the generations in front of us think that it's because we want free shit. But I as a millennial am a minority because I bought a house.
Right.
You know,
right.
Like millennials don't want they don't want free stuff. They just want a fair shake. And that's kind of what their advertisement was with the financial stuff, the financial institutions and just blowing them up and all of that is, you know, give everybody a free chance, you know, to do what everybody else does.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's that whole villain, you know, the whole villain thing that now they make all villains so that they have a good purpose. They just go about it the wrong way. That's the new trope. You know, when you think about it, everybody likes a villain that's doing things for a good cause.
Yeah,
you know,
I do,
kind of thing.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I think the other interesting thing about that is I don't know that I loved the anarchy type themes in the movie, but I think what's interesting when I was watching it, what's interesting is how I could take those and think about like a less destructive way of anarchy, right? Like, how do I take those same ideas, like, you know, tear down the institution, because that's not my thing. But how can I do it a different way? How can I do it in a way that serves me and not me serving them. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of that was a different take on it that I had when I rewatched the film, that I don't know that I picked up on the first time is, I'm obviously not going to go and do destructive anarchist type things, but I can make sure that I'm not paying extra interest in my credit so that they benefit from me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to get that car paid off faster so that I can save myself the interest and not benefit Wells Fargo. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Stick it to the man
and
or something. I don't know.
Anything that we can do to remove benefit to Wells Fargo is a good thing. I'm just saying.
I don't even want to talk about it.
So yeah, I mean, I think that kind of like a big thing with this movie really is that a lot of its stuff is just kind of ahead of its time. I think that might be part of the reason why it was nominated for a special effects Oscar and not for a great performance from any number of actors in there. I mean, and I'm not just talking about, any of them. Jared Leto, even in this movie, Blondie, Angel Face, I think was his name.
Oh,
yeah.
Jared get Leto. Off my porch. You're too blonde. You'll never get in. I forgot that.
Yeah. And he was the one that Edward Norton really messed up in one of the Fight Club meetings because Tyler had shown him some favor
right
after one of their things. It was just, I mean, there were a lot of really good performances from a lot of people. I mean, and it's so weird now to go and look at some of these old ones, like I'm looking at some of the other awards and stuff that they had on here, and the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards. They had Worst Supporting Actress for Helena Bonham Carter in 1999. Worst on-screen female hairstyle for Helena Bonham Carter.
I can agree with that. I can definitely. Although worst performance is that's not okay. She was fantastic. She's fantastic in everything she does.
Right. And about the only thing that I noticed at all about her performance that was kind of like, that's kind of odd. I don't know if you remember when they left that meeting, she went to a laundromat, took half the clothes out of a couple of different dryers, walked them over to a pawn shop across the street, sold them, and then they walked out after exchanging phone numbers, where he was asking her to exchange phone numbers. And as she walked away, she stopped in the middle of the street and she was like, you didn't put a name. Is it Cornelius, Rupert, Travis? The way she said it, you could kind of get a hint of her British accent.
Yeah.
When she was saying Cornelius and Rupert, and it was like, oh, she wavered there. But by far not an awful performance, and that's not going to destroy the entire thing. But I am really surprised that they had gotten so many negative awards back in 1999.
Do you think it's because we just didn't get it yet? Like,
I think that the largest part of it was they made a movie based on a book by an author that was speaking to a younger generation. When this movie came out, I was 15. This was after like theaters stopped using the rating system as a guideline for parents and started using it as a bouncer at the door. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Right. But kids could go to an R-rated movie, but that was because their parents would say, you can go to this R-rated movie.
Right.
They didn't have to go up and tell them. They didn't have to say, it's okay if my child watches this, because the theater would go under the assumption that the children's parents know what they're doing because they're parenting. So,
Right.
So they didn't have to check coats at the door as people were going in. So, well, by the time this movie came out, they were using that as a restriction for purchasing tickets. So a lot of the people I think that would have understood, that would get this movie, I don't think were the right age to watch it.
Well, and you talk about balls in your face. This movie really is balls in your face to the generation ahead of me, because that's how they live their life. We go to school, we graduate, we get the career, we get married, we have the kids, we have the house with the white picket fence, and that's, you do the things that you're supposed to do. And they kind of set up what you're supposed to do for us. You know what I mean? And so I suppose this would not have a whole lot of appeal because it really is kind of a middle finger to your expectations being placed on me. And so I guess that makes sense because at the time, I mean, I'm at the tail end of Gen X, but at the time, the people in power were the people in the generation ahead of us. So this wouldn't, I would imagine this would land pretty flat with them, given what they already believed about Gen X. You know what I mean? Like, the reason we're Gen X is because we weren't going to amount to anything. We weren't going to be able to achieve much of anything.
The MTV generation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Of course, I could go into a whole litany of, things. So never mind. I'll keep my political mouth out of it for now.
Oh, that's fine. I don't mind politics in movies. As long as it follows the real life rules of politics, and that's that it doesn't impede the rights of others.
Yeah.
So and I think that's kind of where the problem with Tyler Durden goes in this movie, is that his ideas impede others' rights to be alive.
Well,
blowing up whole portions of a city, like,
right. Of course, he did say in the garage that nobody's here. It's not about the people.
Right.
It's about the system, right? And I don't think that that was his. I don't think that was his goal. But if you take out the consumerism and the anarchy and the, stick it to the man kind of attitude, the other thing that I really got from this film was mental health. I mean, it just rang through. And I think part of that definitely is the stage of life that I'm in and the work that I do, right? But I think what was interesting to me is this idea of like balance, and how when he became off balance and it was going too far the other way, it went way too far the other way, right? And the importance of connection, the importance of having people, having a village of people around you who can, have your back and look out for you. Because it was clear to me, it was uber clear that he didn't have people. He didn't have people that cared for him. He didn't have people to check in on him. And even when he went to his doctor was like, no, I'm not giving you anything to sleep. You need to go figure it out. Right. And I mean, he was talking about, and that was fascinating to me when he was sitting in front of his doctor telling him all the things. I lose time. I can't sleep at night. And then during the day, it's like I disappear, like I fall asleep and I don't know what happened. He was probably starting that process into psychosis or schizophrenia or whatever it is that he has, right? And because he didn't even have a connection with the general practitioner is like, get over it. Go home and drink some chamomile tea and go to sleep, right?
Chew some valerian root and get some exercise. That's what he told him. Like,
wow.
And then when he stands up and he's like, hey, I'm in pain. You have to do something. I'm in pain. And he's like, you want to see pain? Go down to First Methodist on, Thursday night or whatever. And, and see the guys with testicular cancer. Now that's pain. And it's like,
okay. But let's just be real clear that that's why Generation X is the way we are. You want to see real pain? Dry up your tears and walk down the street. Kick rocks, dude. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
That's why we are the way we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
but, you know, if
I
don't know, it just emphasized the need for people. It emphasized the need for connection with people, because I think not only can isolating magnify mental health problems, but not having people around you who are looking out for you and have your best interest in mind makes it really hard not to get lost. And he was trying for connection, found that some limited surfacey connection was helpful for him, but still there was no one there that
friends.
was single serving friends. That's one of my favorite. It's another one of my favorite lines of the whole thing. And that is probably, honestly, that line is probably what's had the most impact on me, is thinking about deep connection in that way. Like, I don't need single serving friends. I need people that I can connect with and who know me, and people who I want to know me. You know what I mean? That I'm known and I want to be known. And that was a big piece of this for me, was really just an emphasis of how important it is to have people around us. I don't know that would have prevented him from having the massive mental health breakdown that he had. But it definitely...
Right. Depending on what it is. Like,
right.
I mean...
And they don't talk about that.
Yeah. Because really, honestly, I don't think that's important. I think the message is beyond the diagnosis.
Well, and quite interesting. The other piece of that, Ben, for me, is the thought of how he was deceiving himself. You know what I mean? It was like he had spent so much time deceiving himself that he deceived himself in a big way and didn't even realize it. It was like this insidious little creep up of things that he had been doing this whole time, that just kind of it came to a head and flew over what it was. So this movie was super effective at just blowing up the little things that we all experience, little things that we all think, little things that we all feel, and then just blowing it up to the nth degree, so that we really have to look at it and you have to address it and say, okay, what is this like for me? So
and show that that we are all vulnerable to these little things. I mean, and sometimes it's out of your control on whether you let them affect you, depending on where you are mental health wise. But it's interesting because, like, I wouldn't have thought that watching this 20 years ago. That I don't think that would have come to mind at all. Like, it really does make me kind of appreciate how I, as well as anybody else, has the power to help somebody in this kind of a situation. You may not be able to fix it, because trying to fix other people don't do it, but it's amazing what kind of good you can do for a person just by showing them that you see them. Like, hey, I see you. Like, I see that you're there, and I'm here too. So, are you there? She's gone. Alert. A co-host has gone rampant. Alert. A co-host has gone rampant. Welcome back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Were you there the whole time?
No. Nope, I disappeared.
Okay. Like, story-wise, of course it's not going to happen in the Fight Club story, because then it would take away a lot of the interesting stuff in the story. But what would have happened if somebody would have just stopped and said, hey, I see you and I understand. Or, like, if somebody would have just taken a moment to to give of themselves to Tyler Durden.
Right.
Like how that could have made a difference. Maybe not fix it, but it could have made a difference.
Yeah.
And it also offers opportunities for somebody to be like, hey, can I help you find some help? You know, like if somebody is let in for that.
Yeah.
Which is really funny because he kind of did that a little bit for somebody else in the movie.
Yeah.
He was kind of that person for Marla Singer at times. not the majority of the time. The majority of the time he was quite crass and a total dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, when she called him and said, hey, I need you, can you please come and check? I think I found a lump, you know, and he drops everything and goes to her house or whatever. And, you know, it ends up the way that it does or whatever. But he's like, but he gave himself, you know, to go help somebody else. But how would it have been different if somebody would have done that for him?
Mm-hmm. Well, or if he would have let someone else do that for him. You know, part of me wonders is how much of that was self-inflicted, how much of that was self-imposed. And again, I think that's watching it from my current perspective. You know what I mean? You know, I'm in a stage in life where I really do like being at home and being with my small people, like my small group of housemates, you know, the people that I live with and my puppy, and that's okay. And so in this space, that message for me was really okay. You know, do you have the connections that will help you be successful? Do you have the people around you, and do you see the value in that and the importance in that? And I do. I think the challenge is that, you know, in my work, it feels super connected. And I think that there is connection, but it's more than single serving. But I don't know that that's, you know, I don't know that, do I have a 2 a.m. friend at work? You know what I mean? Who is my 2 a.m. person at this point? And I do think as we get older, I think those relationships are harder. They're harder to maintain or to find or to keep. And so a lot of times we kind of turn into family. You know what I mean? Like you are definitely, you're a 2 a.m. friend. Like you're my 2 a.m. person. If there is someone that I'm closest to, it's going to be you and Jen, you know, and that's who I'm going to call. And really looking at, is that enough? You know, is that, do I need to build my bench a little deeper? Do I need a few more people there that that aren't just investing in me, but that I get to invest in also? Because that's where that true connection comes from. So yeah, it gave me a lot to think about in that way too. Not that I'm worried that I'm on my way to psychosis or something, but but again,
you were there a long time ago, sister.
Yeah. But you blow it up to the macro amount, you know, and then it really does, you know, then that's where the nuggets are, you know, that's where the little pieces are. So it's a super fun movie, and I think it would be easy to watch it on the surface and just enjoy the show, right? Because it is kind of a fun show. And they did do a lot of cool things, you know, the way that they I think you called it fourth wall, right? Where the narrator kind of breaks character, breaks what he's doing in the current action and stares at us and kind of fills us in on what's happening. That was really cool. I think the character pieces where you're trying to figure out the little bits where you're seeing something's not quite right. It's like the whole movie is this digression into madness. You know what I mean? The house, the dilapidated house, gets crazier and crazier as you move along, and you know all of these pieces.
See, that's the interesting part, is that the dilapidated house starts as almost like a skeleton. Like it's like the walls were water spotted from floor to ceiling, in the middle of the wall, everywhere. And by the time Project Mayhem gets going, even halfway through it, the house is astounding.
Well, right.
Like, but they painted it and they rebuilt it and they put in a garden and all of that stuff. Like, it's so weird how, like, it's descending into chaos, but in the visual portrayal, it's becoming what everybody aspires to have.
Well, it's like you get to watch as he's spiraling, and then he almost starts owning it, right? And then it kind of like, it's almost like a rebound, and he starts being comfortable. It's like he's owning where he's at, and he starts being comfortable in this role. And where his mind is, you can almost see that in the house. It is like the house is almost its own character, I think. But there were so many, like the lighting effects and the way, like the use of water in the whole thing. Like some of that stuff was really interesting. And I think you can pick up on that stuff if you're just watching it for fun. But I always love the movies that make me think. And this was one of them. Like like I said, the more you watch it, the more I get out of it, the more I see in it. And it's probably been 5 or 6 years since I've watched this movie. So watching it again, I'm like, oh, look, there's some new stuff for me today. Like, just wrapped up and ready.
Right. That kind of brings me to kind of my favorite part of the show, what I call the medicinal part.
Okay.
And that's basically where I ask, did this movie ever change or influence you? Was this movie ever medicine for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think from the first time I watched the movie, the ending was like, it like sparked curiosity. It made me go back. After I watched it the first time, it made me go back several times, like right away. I watched it and watched it and watched it, because it was like, okay, that was unexpected. Like I didn't see it coming. And then to go back and watch it again and see it on the airplane and see it in the doctor's office and see it in the, you know what I mean? All these different places where you're like, the moment that I realized, oh my gosh, he blew up his own place, right? Like those kind of things. So definitely the entertainment value for me in this movie when I first watched it was awesome. I think even today, after watching it again, it's almost like it's almost like reinforcing why I love the movie to begin with. Because watching it today after 5, 6, 7 years, I don't even know how long it's been. It's probably been at least that long. It really gave me some new things to think about. It made me think again about, I don't know about being intentional, but maybe intentionally noticing how much better I feel now that I have purged a bunch of junk, right? Now that I'm getting the stuff out and not letting my things own my space, but I'm going to own my space. You know what I mean? And recognizing that, because I think we can do those things without recognizing it, and then it doesn't matter anyway. Just like we can buy a bunch of things and let it own us without recognizing it. That's the piece, you know? So I also have this really great knack for taking something that's simply entertaining and turning it into some life lesson. So I'm just going to do that again today. I'm just going to take those pieces, those things to say, okay, let me look at my relationships again and really make sure that I have the places, the pieces in place for me to be able to grow my best and to give to others and to receive from others. And let me recognize the work that I've done in freeing my space of extra junk and how that's going to free my mind of extra junk, and just being more intentional about those things. So I appreciate bringing this back to me again, because it's just some of those things that I don't think about often enough. And to really be able to put some intentionality behind that will be helpful for me, I think, moving forward. So what about you?
Cool. Really, honestly, it just, for me, it's really just a good reminder that I need to be checking on the people around me more. Reforging some connections and things like that, so that the people who are important to me know that if they need me, that I'm there. Even beyond that, a little bit, other people that I maybe don't even know, maybe I've never met and might not ever see again. Those people might also be worth investing even just a moment to say, hey, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Because that might make a world of difference for somebody. Sometimes I forget some of those things. And I really start to relax in some of those things that I I preach an awful lot to a lot of other people, to make sure that they're showing people value, and that they do matter. So, that's kind of the medicine that did for me this time around. At the time, honest to God, I think it was really just that it spoke really loudly to an angsty teenager that was really into angry white boy music.
Well, I was going to say, it put words to what you were experiencing. And, I don't know that I could have recognized that back then. But I can definitely see that now. How valuable is that to be able to see on screen exactly what it is that you're feeling? It's medicine. That is medicine, to be able to see that it's normal and that you're not alone, and
that at least somebody else gets it.
Yes. That's huge. It's huge. So it's medicine.
So yeah, I mean, I know that you got your own podcast and everything, but I figure at some point I'm going to be able to convince you into jumping back on here again. You just have to start thinking about some of those movies that I brought you in the past and some of the ones that you brought to me.
For sure.
So
super excited about that.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thanks, sister. Thank you very much. Normally I would take this time to, tell everybody that if they'd like to make a suggestion or if they'd like to share an experience of their own, that they could look on social media, or they could contact me at contact@movie-rx.com. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go ahead and say, go ahead and plug yourself. What do you do?
What do I do as in our podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Malin and I started a podcast almost a year ago, depending upon what time this gets released. We called it Roundtable Mindset. We are absolute opposites, my friend Malin and I, and we have been absolute opposites from the day we met in second grade, although he would say it's third grade. We still argue about that. But he's very right-leaning and I'm very left-leaning. I mean, he works in corporate America and I work in small nonprofit. And so we have very different perspectives on things. And part of our goal is really just to have a space where we can have hard conversations and understand that everyone comes to the table with their own perspective, and that perspective doesn't have to squish mine, and that we can hear one another. We can have those hard conversations and learn from each other. And that doesn't have to, I guess, divulge into chaos and strife and stuff like that. So, we just kind of aim to have those conversations. You've been on our podcast, which has been cool because you kind of brought a whole different flair to the episode that you were on, which was fun. But we do bring guests on and things like that. It's been a fun, I don't know. I hate the word journey. I can't think of any other way to describe it, because it really has been a journey.
It's a very Gen X hippie sort of word.
You know what it reminds me of? Here's why it makes me cringe every time. It's because it reminds me of The Bachelor. Like when he's got the last episode with the 3 girls, and he's like, I've loved this journey, but I just can't be with you. And it just, and then the next one, this journey's been amazing, but it's not you. And then the last one, I've loved every step of this journey. Let's get married and we're going to break up in 2 weeks. So I don't know. I hate the word, but no, that's kind of what we do over at Roundtable Mindset. So thanks for letting me plug.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead and head over and take a look at Roundtable Mindset, and and until then, keep an eye out for your next prescription, and I hope to see you at the next checkup. Thank you.